Hi, everyone. It's me, Sandy Cruz. Welcome to Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. For many years now, I've been a trusted voice for people in midlife and beyond who want a deeper, more honest conversation about wellness. One that includes the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the esoteric. Most episodes are solo now because I want to bring you thoughtful research, lived experience, and grounded insight without noise or bias. And when I do bring on a guest, it's because their work genuinely adds something meaningful to the conversation. Here, we explore the full spectrum of what it means to be well, how the body functions, how the mind heals, how the spirit expands, and how all of these layers shape life lived with clarity and joy. Thanks for being here. And if this show resonates with you, please follow, rate, review, and share it. It truly helps the message reach more people. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. Today is a big episode, and I have in over 6 years never had to record, re-record, try again for as many times as I had to for this episode. I've never done it in guest interviews, and in my own, sometimes I do because I'm like, oh, I don't like how this feels, or there's something I missed and I want to go back and redo this, or sometimes even just my energy behind it. I'll be like, no, I need to redo this because now, as most of you know, most of my episodes are solo. And I've done this for a reason, but I am going to first, don't leave me, okay? Stay here because I'm going to talk about 5 of some of the most commonly removed organs in the body that we're told you don't need them. And I'm going to preface this by saying, stick with me through the end because I am going to give you options. Like, what if you're like, well, I already don't have a gallbladder, so this is pointless for me to listen to this, or I already don't have a uterus, so what's the point? There are things that you can do to balance the body when that organ is gone. Sometimes we have to remove them. So I am going to go back to why I started to do more solo episodes. I found that in this world of podcasting, for over 6 years I've been here, you have a lot of influences from your guests, whether it's to get and share a coupon code, whether there's bias because the guest strongly believes in their product. Listen, there's nothing wrong with that. However, most of you who follow me and have been following me know that I try and always come from a perspective of balance. And my t-shirt says that it's all about the balance. And I got a scale there and Sandy K Nutrition. I made this t-shirt when I started my podcast. So that's why I do most of it alone. I'm not saying that everybody out there is a scam because that's not true. It's just that you just don't know what is bias anymore and what is a true objective opinion and what is objective research. So I am a researcher. I am a registered holistic nutritionist with multiple certifications, and I've been in this industry for a long time. Follow me on all of my social media channels. It's Sandy K Nutrition everywhere. I'm most active on Instagram, and I've developed some really great relationships with people there. And I thought my podcast cover is with me and this red lipstick. And I thought, I feel like wearing my red lipstick. I don't know if you guys are like that, but every once in a while you're like, I feel a little more bold today. So I thought this would actually help me to record this podcast once and for all, get it right, make sure it feels right, and get it out there. Today I'm going to talk about the gallbladder. I'm going to talk about the uterus, the ovaries. I'm going to talk about the appendix. How many of you out there have had your appendix removed? And I'm also going to talk about the tonsils because these are some. I'm not going to include the thyroid. Most of you know I had thyroid cancer. I had my entire thyroid gland removed at age 41. I'm now 56, gone through menopause without a thyroid. And yes, there is a connection, but the thyroid is such a big thing to remove that I think it needs an episode all on its own, especially if you're a woman. And there are reasons for that because there are connections to estrogen and the thyroid gland. And going through menopause, nobody talked to me about any of this stuff. I had to do all my own research, and I am certified in functional lab testing as well as endocrinology and hormones. So I learned a lot about the thyroid gland, not just through schooling, but also through experience. And that's why I'm going to get an episode going specifically only on thyroid. But wherever you are watching or listening, please be sure that you hit follow or subscribe. It just helps me to keep going. I'm not a celebrity. I'm not somebody who comes with a massive audience. So if you follow me and you share my podcast, even with one friend, it just helps me to get discovered so that I can help more people from an unbiased, objective point of view in the areas of health and wellness, science and soul, and how to age better, preferably naturally, if we're able to do that. So, I'm going to get into this now because I think you're going to love this. I'm going to talk about why they fail, what they do, what changes when they're gone, and how we can live well without them. And I'm going to tell you right now, nobody has done a podcast like this one because I'm going to get into not only the science, I'm going to get into some of the myths, some of the things that you hear from doctors, because nobody even told me what a thyroid gland does. And this is like, so this would be going back to 2011 when I had it removed. Nobody said your thyroid gland does this, 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 and this. This is how some of the things that you might learn. I had to educate myself. And so this is why I'm giving you the breadcrumbs. This is not medical advice. This is not to say you're doom and gloom if you've lost the organ. I'm just giving you some breadcrumbs and things in how to kind of rebalance your health, your wellness, your nutrition, because I am a nutritionist, and also energetically. So, I have recorded podcasts with Yvette Rose. She wrote the book Metaphysical Anatomy. You might have heard of it. I'm using some of her work, also Julia Cannon. And then there's I think he was a psychiatrist. He has since passed. I have a massive book. Michael J. Lincoln, I believe his name is. I have his, it's like an anthology. It's massive. These books are huge. But really, I have it. Hold on one second. This is one of the books. And I'll tell you a story behind this one because I'm so fascinated with the organs in the body, what they mean energetically, what happens. Can you, like, what kind of illnesses can amount from different dysfunctions, different, let's say, psychological areas, traumas, and how the body responds. I'm a big believer. This is why you can never discount the energetic properties behind any health issues ever. This is why I'm all about science and soul, but I'll tell you a little about this book. This is Michael J. I was right, Lincoln, and he was a PhD. And I think his story is he used to work in a psychiatric hospital, and through many, many, many years, he documented his patients' psychological ailments to the physical ailments that they had. And this is called Messages from the Body. So I was in Sedona. I've been to Sedona twice. And the second time I went, I saw this and then I'm like, oh, I'll just grab it from home when I go home. This was in 2019 when I went last, I think. No. maybe later, 2022, because my dog died shortly after I got back. So I was there in 2022. I saw this book and then I was like, oh my God, I could get this from Amazon at home. Couldn't find it anywhere. Maybe now you can find it if you're interested in it. But I lugged this giant book home in my carry-on because I loved it so much. So I have recorded with Yvette Rose about, the body and the ailments and energetic properties. I've also recorded with Julia Cannon. She is the daughter of, I think it's Doreen Cannon. Doreen. It starts with a D. She passed quite a few years ago, but Julia Cannon carries on with her work. I recorded with them. I've also recorded with Dr. Bradley Nelson on the body code, the emotion code, unlocking your body's ability to heal itself. Some of the energetic stuff comes from these works, and I am going to give you the science as well because I think it's really important to go over the physiology, the hormones, how these organs affect the nervous system, different energetics, and then there's even the identity. So I'm going to start with the gallbladder. The gallbladder is an organ of timing, boundaries, then there's anger as an emotion, and decisiveness. And I'm going to give you the full breakdown of why the gallbladder can fail from a scientific perspective. So maybe you've heard this. If you lose weight too fast, you can start to have gallbladder issues. And there's a really big reason why that happens. So your fat cells actually will shrink when you lose weight, and then they dump the stored cholesterol into your circulation in your body. And then the liver clears it by secreting more cholesterol into bile. Then the bile becomes really like, think of it as like thick and goopy, and you end up getting crystals and stones. So if you have really low fat intake or low caloric intake that is lower on the fat side, your gallbladder isn't contracting. And so you've got this bile sludge and stones, and that's where it can cause problems. So I want you to think about this. You've got your liver, you've got your gallbladder. Your gallbladder is this organ that stores all this excess bile that is made by the liver. And then it comes into play and it times it perfectly on when you need it because it's what you need to help break down fats. So, this is why if you go low fat on your eating, then you're you're it's like your gallbladder's sitting there going, I got no work to do. I got nothing to do. And so it's not doing its little timing thing to break down the food that you're eating because there's no fat in there, or there's not enough fat in there, and there's not enough caloric intake. So this is why this is really important. And this you're going to find super interesting because there is a connection between GLP-1s, so Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, and there's data to say in this is 2022 that GLP-1s put you at a 37% increased risk of gallbladder or biliary disease. Because, listen, what happens is when you're on these, and there is a place for them. I've recorded a podcast all about GLP-1s. I forget the doctor's name. It was a great recording. But what happens is that GLP-1s can slow that gastric emptying, which slows the gallbladder emptying. And then it can alter those bile acid receptor pathways. And it can also drive that rapid weight loss, which in and of itself can be a risk for gallstones if you're losing weight too quickly. So there's some real data that actually shows that GLP-1s can increase gallstones and gallbladder issues. So if you are on a GLP-1, knowing this information is critically important. You need to eat enough food. You need to eat enough fat. And this isn't about going high fat. My t-shirt says it's all about the balance. This is what's happened in this world. It's like the whole world has become so unbalanced. Like everybody goes on GLP-1s if you're an extra 5, 10 pounds overweight. Come on. We see it all from the Real Housewives. All of a sudden, they're all a normal weight. One season, next season, they come back and they're all like very frail. And this is something we don't want, especially as we're aging. We don't want that. Okay. And you guys are going to find this funny. I remember as a child, I am Croatian, I'm Canadian Croatian. And I remember going to Croatia. And if you were too thin, the people there thought you were sick. So, keep that in mind. It's always about balance in this life, in this world. Frailty is not beautiful. It's just not. And it's also not healthy. You want to be a good, healthy weight. And I've recorded podcasts about this in the past. Make sure you're subscribing. Low fat diets, I already mentioned that. So that is in and of itself why a gallbladder can fail. If you're on there, the gallbladder is rarely emptying. Remember, it's storing all that bile that breaks down the fat and it's just sitting there. This pouch is just sitting there, not doing what it needs to do. It becomes stagnant. So here's another one, estrogen shifts. So pregnancy, hormone replacement therapy, all of these things can actually change the bile and reduce motility. So be aware of these changes, especially if you're a woman, if you've got major shifts in estrogen. Estrogen dominance can do this. So, like, be aware of what's going on and what might be a causative factor. Insulin resistance, well, we know this. This slows gallbladder emptying. It increases the cholesterol saturation, and it can actually alter the bile acid composition. And so that's something to always be aware of. And then there's always going to be genetics. There are genetics. There are some that show that if your parents had their gallbladder removed, your chances are higher. So being aware of this is really important because remember, it's a storage organ. It's not useless. It concentrates your bile up to 20 times. And it releases it on demand. Okay. So this is what enables you to digest fats. But here's another thing that a lot of people don't talk about. And I can guarantee you wouldn't hear this from many of your physicians is that it can alter your absorption of the fat soluble vitamins A, D, E, K. So, because it can affect if your gallbladder isn't there or it's not working functionally, it can affect whether you're absorbing these nutrients from your food. It's really gallbladder is an important organ. It also helps to clear those estrogen metabolites. So, I've done a lot of podcasts about menopause and hormones, and we never want to recycle estrogen. Estrogen is supposed to clear. So, you have to make sure that, you're pooping every day and all these other factors because that helps to clear that estrogen that we don't need anymore because we want to make new estrogen. So, it also can control the microbial balance. Okay, so these things are all very important. I'm going to now give you some of the myths. I've got 5 of them. Okay, these are things that you might have heard from your doctor. You don't need it. The reality is this: you can certainly survive without it. My mother doesn't have hers for many years. I think she was 20 when she lost it. My husband doesn't have his either. So you certainly can survive without it. But you lose that bile timing that I was talking about. You also lose the efficiency of fat digestion. It doesn't mean you don't absorb fat at all. It just that the efficiency is gone. Okay. Because remember, you had this beautiful little timing organ that would time out that bile whenever some fat came into your body and you don't have it anymore. So it can also affect your vitamin absorption and antimicrobial bile pulses. So that's the truth. When a doctor says you don't need it, you can survive without it, but these are factors that you will have to live with. Okay? Myth number 2, your liver will take over. Your liver will not take over. Your liver has always made the bile. Okay? The difference is that it will not take over because the liver can't store that bile like the gallbladder did. Okay? So it can't store it and it can't time release it. So the liver will be dripping the bile. Okay? It's there, but you may not be able to digest fat. You actually won't be able to. So I'm going to get into that. Nothing changes after removal. That's another myth. That's actually untrue because the fat digestion changes. You can also have a shift in your hormones. There can be microbial changes and vagal tone shifts. I'll get into that. Myth number 4, the gallbladder attacks come out of nowhere. It's like this mysterious attack. And it's like, oh, well, I'm sorry, you just got this attack out of nowhere. We don't know why it happened. But the reality is they come from like static bile. They come from rapid weight loss, estrogen shifts, insulin resistance, GLP-1 induced motility changes. And then also there's that factor of genetics, poor lifestyle. So they come from something. Okay. And then myth number 5, it's just a useless sac. It is not. It is a precision timing organ that helps you to break down all the fat. And when I speak of fat, keep in mind, people always label good fats, bad fats. We're eating fat all the time. It's just a matter of how much, the quality of the fats. Olive oil is a beautiful quality of fat. So any fat that you eat, depending on how much, will have an effect. If you're going to go out and get like Chick-fil-A, like major fried chicken and French fries and all of that, and you don't have a gallbladder and you're not supporting your body, you might have some issues. Okay. So, what happens when it's removed? I've kind of covered this a little bit. The bile drips constantly, so there's no timing. Their fat digestion becomes inconsistent. Sometimes, you might have to run to the bathroom. Vitamins A, D, E, and K can drop. Estrogen detox slows. You have more of a risk of SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which I mentioned the microbial changes. It's on your right side, just kind of below the rib cage. You can actually have a tightening in your diaphragm and vagal tension, which can mean you can have more anxiety. And you're like, I never had this before. Now I'm anxious. That is more the energetic property of the organ. So, how to keep it healthy: moderate daily healthy fats, avoid chronic low fat diets, avoid rapid weight loss, bitter foods. So, I want you to think about this. When you go to a wedding, I'm Eastern European. You go to a wedding and they'll start off with a salad, and that salad might have dandelion and different bitter greens. There's a reason why having a salad before you eat is really good for digestion. It actually starts to stimulate that bile. So it's like a signal for your body, because they're bitter greens, that your body's going to go, oh, okay, there's a meal coming. And it will start to stimulate the bile. It will also start to stimulate those enzymes to help break down the food. It's like a prep stage. So if you know that you have some bile gallbladder issues, it's always great to start with some bitter greens. Yes, we want to support insulin sensitivity. You want to stay hydrated. Hydration is always important, magnesium. Now, people are going to say, well, I don't have a gallbladder, so what do I do? So, a very important thing to do is in any kind of fat containing meal, you want to add ox bile. And there are a number of different digestive enzymes, and it'll be a comprehensive digestive enzyme that will have lipase, which is a pancreatic enzyme to help you to break down fat. So lipase, it'll have that. It will also have ox bile. So those are two things to look for in a digestive enzyme. If you're going to eat a meal that might have a little more fat, you want to enjoy whatever it is that normally makes you run to the bathroom. This is a very important facet. And also, you when you take these enzymes, it will help you absorb the nutrients better. Because remember, I talked about vitamins A, D, E, and K. That might be something that you need to supplement with. I am certified in supplementation nutraceuticals. So, you might need to ensure that you're taking extra fat soluble vitamins. Speak with your practitioner. I'm not giving you any advice here, but you also want to make sure that you have estrogen detox support, SIBO prevention, and a little bit of diaphragm release. This is the energetic side, which would be, breath work, that sort of thing. Oh, I want to get into a little bit more of the energetics of the gallbladder, which I think you're going to find really cool. So the gallbladder is a timing organ and it releases the bile. When you take it away, the bile just drips. And it's almost like you lose and energetically that loss of internal timing. So more hesitation. It sits under the diaphragm, and the diaphragm can tighten when you're suppressing truth, anger. So there could be issues with boundary suppression. Think of that as boundary suppression, bile suppression. This all comes from mostly Yvette Rose. Anger. So bile equals mobilization, anger equals mobilization, suppressed anger, stagnant bile. Okay. So decisiveness is another energetic property that's tied to the gallbladder. So the bile pulse, the internal go signal, when you remove it, there's no longer a surge and there's a difficulty with initiation. So why does it fail energetically? This is an interesting part of this conversation. Suppressed anger, resentment, fear of confrontation, chronic self-betrayal, ancestral silence. Yvette Rose describes it as swallowed anger, and Julia Cannon describes it as not living your truth. So I found that really interesting. So why removal happens, and this is energetically, there's always the scientific side to every explanation in wellness. The body can't hold unexpressed anger, the refusal to confront truth. Removal forces boundary reconstruction. After removal, loss of internal timing, difficulty assessing clean anger, hesitation, emotional flatness. How to stay balanced. So let's say you had it removed. I explained how to stay balanced nutritionally. How do you stay balanced energetically? You want to ensure that you assert your boundaries and have rituals around that. And remember this because often we hear like on TikToks and, from some of I don't know if they're millennials, like they're like 30 years old and they're like, I'm putting my boundaries up on you. Like that's not what boundaries mean. And so be careful of what you see and who the advice is from. Boundaries come from inside. Boundaries come from here. It's not from the outside in, it's from the inside out. And having some sort of understanding of what is right for you and what isn't is critically important. But I've recorded so many podcasts on unless you get quiet, you're never going to know what that is. Right rib mobility. And, if you work with an osteopath, you can get help with that because osteopaths are pretty interesting in how they work. I have one. I love my osteopath. Truth telling and resentment release. These are all more somatic, energetic practices if you no longer have the organ or if you know that the gallbladder is dysfunctioning. Okay, let's move on to the uterus. Okay, this is an interesting one because this one is women centered, obviously. And the uterus really signifies rhythm, identity, feminine polarity, and the creative pulse. And this one is kind of cool because how many times have you heard, and I'm going to get into the myths, that, it's just a baby house? You don't need it when you're older. I'm going to get into that. So, the reason why, some of the main reasons, everybody's maybe got their own individual reason, but fibroids, endometriosis, prolapse, cancer, those are the main reasons why a uterus is removed. And what does the uterus do? Well, it builds your cycle, right? And then sheds. It communicates with the ovaries. It anchors the pelvic nerves. So people who have pelvic issues, pelvic floor issues, that also connects to the uterus. It supports orgasmic contractions. It stabilizes the pelvis and it supports immune tolerance. Here's some myths. Now I'm going to get to that whole thing. You won't need progesterone anymore. Progesterone receptors exist throughout the entire body, not just the uterus. So that is a myth, and you'll have to explore that with your hormone doctor, especially around menopause. Number 2, your hormones won't change. Uterine removal reduces ovarian blood flow, and ovarian hormone output often drops anyway, even if your ovaries were saved. So, again, this is something to explore with your hormone specific doctor. Remember that somebody who is qualified in testing your hormones and understands hormones in depth, not a GP, not a general surgeon. No, you need a hormone doctor, no matter where you are, for them to truly dig deep on if this is something that's for you. Number 3, your libido won't change. Progesterone plus estrogen plus pelvic nerve feedback all influence your libido. Not saying you're going to never want to have sex again. I'm just saying that if libido is an issue for you, again, speak with a hormone doctor. Number 4, it's just a baby house. It's a rhythmic organ that's wired into identity, emotional flow, pelvic stability, and nervous system regulation. Number 5, you'll feel the same emotionally. The reality is the pelvic sensory input changes, and you can experience significant identity shifts. Not saying you will, I'm saying you can. And really, you're the only one who could determine that inside out, right? So, what happens when it's removed? Ovarian blood flow drops, progesterone drops, pelvic nerve changes, the pelvic floor can tighten, breath can move upward, and you can experience a masculine heavy shift. And I'm not saying you turn into a dude. If you want to explore this um, at greater length, I want you to look at, and I always love to look at, you know, Chinese medicine. There's yin and yang, masculine, feminine. And we all have masculine and feminine within us. And I could tell like certain energies within me sometimes express more than others. And what the energy speaks about the uterus is that you'll sometimes see women become more assertive, more aggressive, and there's an imbalance. They might just express more of that masculine side than the feminine side. I'm a big believer in balance in everything. So if you feel that that has shifted, you can do certain practices. How to keep it healthy, you want to always support progesterone. And that's a big myth. And again, you can speak to your hormone doctor, but people saying you don't need any progesterone ever until you're in menopause, or, if you have your uterus removed, you don't need progesterone because your uterus is gone. That's actually very untrue. And if you test it properly and work with a practitioner who gets it, you'll see that progesterone can often be something that needs to be supported much sooner, way sooner than estrogen. It's the hormone that declines much quicker than estrogen, way before menopause. I started progesterone in my 40s, way before estrogen. You can't take estrogen. Well, you're not supposed to take estrogen unopposed with progesterone, but you can take progesterone without estrogen. And that goes to my next point, is that estrogen dominance can be a risk factor for your uterus, the health of your uterus. And a lot of women, I know I had it in my 40s, I was definitely estrogen dominant for sure. And so that is a risk factor in your uterine health. You want anti inflammatory nutrition. What's anti inflammatory nutrition? You want to just have whole, real foods. Guys, last night I made the most beautiful bowl. Oh my God. It was just some white rice with, I made a gorgeous, like, feta, tomato, cucumber, balsamic, like a salad. And then I had some chicken that I did, grilled chicken on the barbecue. Like, so simple. Like, when people say they don't have time to cook, I'm always like, you just have to think about it and plan ahead. So, anti inflammatory nutrition is always going to be nutrition. Try your best to eat whole, real foods. Pelvic floor strength, really important. And then, if you have really painful periods, you need to treat that seriously. And it's not just about slapping you on a birth control pill. That's what happened to me at age 18. And it didn't serve me at all. That back then, I would have been, uh, that was in 1988. I'm a 1970 baby. But back then, that's what they did. And a lot of doctors still do that now. So see a hormone specialist if you have really painful periods. How to live well without a uterus. So you want to track symptoms. You want to evaluate the hormones. Pelvic floor therapy. I have seen a pelvic floor therapist. It's kind of weird. Like, it's a little invasive. That's all I'm going to say. Strength training and rebuild your identity consciously. So, if you see your nervous system, your energy is really masculine heavy, control, assertive, aggressive. You don't stop. You bulldoze through things. These are all masculine energies. If you've had your uterus removed or you have issues with your uterus and you see that you're more on this side, that signifies an energetic imbalance. And there are things you can do. I'm going to explain the rhythm, identity, feminine polarity, and creative pulse around the uterus. Okay. The uterus is also a rhythmic organ. Well, actually, the gallbladder is a timing, but everything is timing, rhythm, right? It creates a somatic clock. So when you remove that, you can lose that rhythm and you become more linear and more in that masculine go, go, go mode. The uterus is wired into the sacral plexus. So that is your grounding, and it makes sense, right? Your sacrum, your the bone at the bottom of your butt. That is sensuality, emotional flow. So this all goes to that whole feminine energy. So you kind of lose that grounding. And if you've ever seen that with, people who have had their uterus removed, or if there are problems with the uterus, they're like flighty. They're all over the place. They don't stop. They're not grounded. I happen to be a very grounded person. I have a lot of earth energy. Feminine polarity, the progesterone drops, the softness can drop, tension can rise, and that masculine survival mode. So the creative pulse, which is kind of interesting, is the uterus is the physical generator of cyclical creation. Super interesting. So, in cycles, I'm sure you feel that way. When women are menstruating, there's a cycle, and at certain times of the month, you feel a certain way, and that creative surge. Well, when you remove that physical generator of cyclical creation is also gone. So the creative energy must be consciously rebuilt. Why it fails energetically. This is always my favorite part. Chronic self abandonment. Do you like my pause there? I'm pausing there for a reason, because I believe that women self abandon so much. And I am going to record a podcast about this. I'm going to record a podcast about women who choose to stay home to raise their kids, and pros and cons. You're going to love that one. Overgiving, loss of identity. This is why it fails energetically. Suppressed creativity, unsafe feminine energy, ancestral trauma. Yvette Rose says it's a disconnection from that feminine identity. And Julia Cannon says it's not living your feminine truth. So the removal happens because the body can no longer hold the emotional load. The feminine identity is suppressed. Don't cry. Why are you crying? Why are you this? Why are you so, whatever, too feminine? After removal, more of that masculine heavy shift can happen. And again, this isn't the physical. This is the actions, the way you move through this world. There's a masculine heavy shift often that occurs. Hyperindependence, emotional armoring. You become more armored in how you express your emotions. Loss of sensuality, loss of creative rhythm, and a disconnection from the pelvis. So, how do you stay balanced if you've had your uterus removed? Rebuild that feminine energy. I'm sure you could figure it out. Always use Chinese medicine, right? What can you do that's more feminine, more on that feminine side? I always steer you in that direction. I can't really tell you what to do there. Sensual movement. Something that I love that I think is very light, feminine, and grounding is Qigong. And it's not about this, you're going to lose weight doing Tai Chi walking. No, not aggressive movement. Aggressive movement is not going to get you there. Sensual movement. That push, I gotta work out at the gym. That's masculine energy. You want more feminine. Even yoga, when it's that, I forget which one it is. There's different types of yoga. There's the soft flow yoga. There's more breath work yoga. There's yoga nidra. Those are all very feminine, light. Hot yoga is not it. Hot yoga is very aggressive, and it tends to be really hard to push through. I've done it like once, and then I'm like, this ain't for me. Pelvic breath work, creative practices, receiving practices, softening rituals, sacral reconnection, and cyclical rituals. So there you go. I've decided to do a part 2. You're going to have to come back next week to hear about the appendix, the dreaded appendix attacks, to hear about the tonsils. How many times have you heard, you got to get your kids' tonsils removed. The uterus and the gallbladder were so huge that I think it's going to be best for retention that you come back next week, and I'm going to cover off those. But in the interim, I'm going to ask you to share this. Please share this with a friend. And if you would, go to Apple or go to Spotify and give me a rating and a review with a few kind words. And be sure that you're subscribing. Let me know if you like this. If you want to get in touch, you can always email me, sandy@sandyknutrition.ca. Thank you guys. Have a great week. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to share it with someone you know might benefit. And always remember, when you rate, review, subscribe, you help to support my content and help me to keep going and bringing these conversations to you each and every week. Join me next week for a new topic, new guest, new exciting conversations to help you live your best life.